Hey guys, I'm excited to be here with you today because I want to walk you through the 5 touches a church can make on any person's life. And it's this is part of a bigger conversation about how to actually get people from the front door of your church all the way into an engaged member of your church. I'm going to show you kind of how the 5 ways that your church can affect them will do that. But today the main priority is to explain these things and then to kind of walk through some of the pluses and minuses of them quickly. And so at least you can start thinking through how you can refine these, how you can utilize these in your church, because there's really only 5 ways that you can affect somebody. So I'm going to share with you what this looks like. Looks like this. So the 5 touches model, okay? Right here, we have services, small groups, events, theme studies, and service, which is like your Christian service. So like serving God by raking leaves in the church parking lot or something like that. Okay. Um, your touches, that's the touches. That's the way that the church influences your life. Next here you have the definition. So what that means is your it's like what are each of these things? So services are inward worship. Small groups are micro connection. There's macro connection in events. Theme studies are spiritual education. And your service is outward worship. So, I'm sorry, I actually wrote the wrong thing here. Okay, so I grouped these kind of out of order, maybe in order. I don't know. Let's do it like that because it'll be easier to look at. So services affect the inward worship. You have church services so that you have church services so that you can like let people into the gates of heaven for a minute, if that makes sense. Like you're trying to share with them the opportunity of your whole church to worship at the same time, to worship their God who saved them, who loves them, all of that. And so it's inward worship. And really, the cool thing about it, like the reason that you know that this is going to work is because you are into total control of how much you worship when you come to a church service. Everyone else can be mad in the room, but you can choose to be peaceful. Everyone else can be worshiping and you can choose not to. Like you're in control. And that's a cool thing for people to realize. Now, there's a couple negatives. You got to wait every week for your church service to come up. Like Sunday morning only happens one time a week. Uh, but you can also challenge people as a pastor to worship on their own time. So it's not like worship has to be only during services. In fact, services can be a great time to teach them, to teach them to worship on their own. But the church can't worship on their own. The people of the church, like, do you see what I mean? Like a congregation doesn't worship because it's multiple people, cannot worship as one person. It's multiple people doing it. And so the service of the church, like the corporate entity of a church, can only affect somebody by teaching them to worship on their own, but they can only worship there in public. Does that make sense? Uh, the other downside is that you have to keep coming. And so like that for some people is a hard thing. They don't want to start coming to church because they don't want to mess up and not come to church anymore. In fact, I had a teacher, she collected bulletins and she had every bulletin from every Sunday that she ever attended. But she didn't want to miss church because she would miss a bulletin. And so she missed one Sunday and like for real, she didn't come back because you have to keep coming. And maybe not everyone's as OCD or as weird about that as she was, but it's real. So you have to keep coming for that to matter. So there's some ways around that, and there's some cool things that you can do to help serve that. And we'll talk about those in a different video, but I just wanted to share that with you. Let's go back to this. Let me share it. So the next one is themed studies. And so this is going to be more spiritual education. We're going to talk about the third column in just a second, but spiritual education comes from themed studies. The idea here is you're going to study the Bible about a topic. So oftentimes this is a hybrid of small groups in many churches. I don't know what just happened, but theme studies and small groups oftentimes get hand holding because their Sunday school or their life groups combine the two. And that's fine. It's just that sometimes you're not going to be able to deal as much in your Bible study, where you're not going to be able to get as much connection with people if you're trying to split one time between two purposes. And so that's the danger of it. But you're going to have to be able to balance that danger. So, are you dealing with more of a theme study? Is the emphasis of your Sunday school more on studying the Bible, or is it more on building connections with other humans in the church to do life together, the as you go style ministry? So, you got to figure out which one you're mainly leaning towards. Some people have even split them. So, you have some groups where they meet for coffee, they do group texts, they just do life together because they're friends. Then you have some a different time throughout the week where they get together and they deal with a specific Bible study. They deal with one topic, they share prayer requests. Its emphasis is Bible education, spiritual education. Okay. And they scratch different itches, which is why it's kind of difficult to combine them, which we're going to get to in just a second. Our third thing is events. Now, if I'm doing an event, then I'm going to typically be able to build macro connections. So small groups do micro connections because they pair one person with a group of people who are like them and they connect together. It's a small group of people. Events try to get not just small groups of people together, but like the groups of people together. So instead of, like, think of it as a family. A small group is kind of like a family, and the church is all the other families that that family is friends with. So you're trying to get together the whole group of families, the whole co-op, so to speak, the whole church family together. But you're also going to use that oftentimes as a front door to the church, and we'll talk about that there. But the idea is macro connection. So you're not connecting with your little niche of people, your little tiny group of people. You're connecting with the whole church together. Okay, that's events. Next up, you have services, and so services happen because you are trying to do out, outward worship of God. Now, service looks like raking leaves, looks like church work days, looks like walking around and doing outreach. It looks like praying for people. It looks like doing the actions of Christianity outwardly. So the church does this because the church is touching it. Now, can Christians do things on their own? Absolutely. Do we expect them as pastors to do that as their own? Absolutely. The goal here is to get them serving on their own and to show initiative in their own world, but the church cannot facilitate their facilitating. Like, like they have to come up with that on their own. But what can the church do? What can the entity do? The corporate body of believers, how can they influence a believer? They can provide opportunities for service. Um, so their service shows their outward worship, but it also connects other people in their outward worship at the same time. Now, let's look at the relationship itch right here. I believe that there's basically two types of relationships that people want help with. And oftentimes, these are the two reasons that they come to church. Either they want relationship help with their friends or with people, or they want relationship help with God. And the reason is they they want people relationships for community, and they go to God or they go to church oftentimes to seek God. A lot of times that changes. So like someone who originally came to figure out how to be a Christian or how to have a better relationship with their Bible or something like that. Maybe they're a seeker and so they found. Well, they came for one reason, but they probably developed community and they became friends with other people, and so now their primary source of relationship isn't just God. Now it's more from people, and that's why they go to church. That's why they do things with other church people. So that's a good thing, and we want that because you're not an island to yourself, and the church is a family, and families live together, they breathe together, they do things together. So let them. Now, if your church scratches one itch primarily. Some churches are more people driven, so they have more events, they have more potlucks, they have more prayer times, they have more sings, whatever. Some other churches are more God driven, and so they're more informational. They deal more with like Bible conferences or missions conferences. They're more spiritual in nature and less relational in nature, as like we see it as humans. Churches tend to be primarily one or the other. A good church is both, because that's what the Bible calls for. So how can we maximize this to scratch both itches? Here's how. You look here, the relationship itch, you can pinpoint what you want to scratch based on what kind of thing that you do. Now, we're going to save this one for last because it, you see, has both. And I'll show you why that's important in a minute. But these four things can pinpoint how to help your church members in their specific season or in your church's specific season. So I tend to think of church ministry as wide and deep, and you probably have thought through this too. There's some seasons where you're trying to grow more people, where you're trying to reach more people, and then there's some seasons where you're trying to deepen their relationship with God or deepen their relationship within the church. And both of these things go actually with both of these, but that's for another day. Let's define wide today as you're trying to reach people. Let's define deep as you're trying to develop relationship with God. So if I'm in a season where my church needs more width, I'm going to try to emphasize my small groups and my events. Do I want my people to be more related with one another right now because they're disunified, or because they're feeling lonely, or because there's some people going through it right now and they just need community? Well, you are the pastor of your church, so scratch the itch of your church. Plug in small groups, emphasize those, emphasize some more events. And maybe you're in a season where for this next few months or the next few years, you just try to scratch the itch where you more primarily focus on people's relationship with other people, because that's a season that you need to go through. Sometimes you need to get more deep, and your church's relationship with God is suffering, maybe because we've done too much with people. We've emphasized too much the church family and not enough the church aspect of that family. So emphasize the services, improve those themed studies. So that Bible study that you're doing on Tuesday nights, let's pump it up. Let's get everybody in the church there. Like, let's make it happen. And when you do that, people are going to get more of that inward worship. They're going to have more experience with God, more time one-on-one with God in a community of people who also are worshiping God, or they're going to do more spiritual education. They're going to learn more about who God is. And that's a good thing, because now we've scratched the itch. So, like, so far, we know what the five touches are. We know what their definition is and what that actually looks like in real life. Then we know the itch that it scratches. And you can use logically the two itches, the two primary itches, in order to scratch those as needed. But a balanced church tries to scratch both. And a balanced church also tries to grow, because if you're not reaching more people with the gospel, then we're not, okay, that's dangerous. I want to say it like that. The goal of the church is to reach more people with the gospel, yes. But there are seasons of growing deep, and there are seasons of spreading wide. And spreading wide would be reaching more people, and growing them deeper is reaching them more towards Christ, if that makes sense. So like getting them to match the image of Christ better. And so if our goal is to do both, how can we maximize our church's growth, both wide and deep? Here's how. You go to this one in service. You get people involved in serving Jesus, and they take what is they take what is inside of them, and they work out their own salvation. And what that does is it multiplies the relationship with God times the relationship with the other people also serving alongside them. And now you're not doing addition, God plus people, you're doing God times people. And that is where churches, at least as I've seen it, that's where churches begin to multiply. the Old Test or the New Testament, like the New Testament model of church, you always see them, yes, talking about God and learning more and growing in doctrine and in truth and in understanding. You also see them though fellowshipping with one another and hosting dinners, and like in Corinth, like having dinner before service and then eating at home, like on your own. Sure, you have those things and they're important things. But the most important thing for people to be doing, at least to grow, is to serve God, because faith without works is dead, not faith without group chats or faith without more like doctoral level research of the Bible. Those are good things. They are. But they're not the thing that multiplies. It's not the thing that becomes exponential growth. It's the thing that just adds layers. Either you can build layers or you can build like elevators. And I'd rather skip floors. I'd rather skip steps with my church if possible. Not to say that I don't want to build good frameworks and ground rules and whatever. That's not my point. I'm just saying you can get faster results by getting your people to serve. So, understanding these frameworks, how can you use these 5 to scratch the itches of your church? How can you use these 5 to maximize the growth of your church in whichever direction, wide or deep, that it needs in this present moment? And then, if your church is able to grow, if it has the infrastructure to grow in size, can you employ more service, better service, or new methods of service to get your church people hooked? Because it's like the drug, it's like the thing that they become addicted to. Even the Bible has ministry addicts. And so we want our church people to become ministry addicts, and we want them to become that together, because they're serving God, but they're also serving with other people. And that is the golden ratio of church. That's what we need. Okay, so hopefully that planted a few thoughts, and hopefully that's clear. So I hope that it can help you in your church, and I hope that it will help us in our church planting endeavors over the next year. Appreciate you guys, and hope that this is helpful